Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Armenian Music Project. I have a guest who's been on this show many times, Danny Bedrosian. Welcome.
Thank you, Tigran. Thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it.
So, you have two exciting announcements. Well, you've announced it already, but for the show, you have the new album and the comic book. Tell me a little bit about both.
Yeah, sure. So the past 2 years, since a little bit before the pandemic, I've been working on the second issue of the Sons of the Sun comic book, the first of which we've talked about before. This is the Vahan, the Dragon Reaper, issue number 2 of the Sons of the Sun comic book, and also the album that I've been working on the past 2 years with the Brothers Nalbandyan from Yerevan, from Armenia, from the Republic. Album Garmir Caramel that we've been working on together also for the past couple of years, and really happy, excited that both of them have dropped quite recently. The comic book just like a month or so ago, and the album just this week. So really excited and happy to be promoting both of those, and of course people can get them by sending $25 domestic or $30 international to my PayPal at info@dannybedrosian.com, or Cash App at $Daniel Bedrosian, or Venmo at Daniel Bedrosian. And if they get both together, it's actually discounted. It's only $40, no matter where you're from, no matter where you are. $40 gets you both together as the package. And if you're Armenian, if you love comic books, if you love funk music, there's a lot of overlap. So if any of those things pertain to you, you should check out both.
Well, tell me about this collaboration with the Brothers Nalbandyan because I know you've done other collaborations with them. How did this whole thing come about? First, the collaboration with the Nalbandyan brothers, overall, just the start, and also the idea for this particular album.
Sure. The Brothers Nalbandyan are some amazing DJs, producers, musicians, very versatile, multi-talented individuals who hail from Yerevan, who I had heard about from an Armenian friend who told me, they're big. These guys are big P-Funk fans. They probably know you. They probably know who you are, since we're Armenian. And before I even got a chance to reach out to them, I think they might have reached out to me as well, maybe even before that, and had expressed, that they're huge fans of Funkadelic, and how honored they are that an Armenian fellow is a long-term member of the band, been in the band for 18 years, as you know, and and they were very honored of that fact that there's a funky Armenian guy in the band, and they wanted to express to me that they too are funky Armenian guys, and boy are they, and their crew, just such a funky crew. They've got some incredible musicians they work with, and they themselves are incredible musicians as well. And we started working on it kind of in a piecemeal way. It was really song by song. We were kind of not looking at an album at first. We were just looking to work together, and we decided to do singles. We were just releasing singles as time went on. And it felt like, at least to me, and I think to them too, that each one was kind of getting better and better. And at a certain point, we might have released 3 or 4, and we said, this needs to be an album. We need to make this an album. So we, of course, released the singles first, and they're available now, and they were available since before the album. But the album was just released this week, like I said, and just so happy that we were able to put it out, because it really was a labor of love, and we focused really hard on quality. Like, it really is an album of singles. It's an album of radio ready, really just well crafted songs. And in terms of, in addition to all the other talents that they have, they're also incredible at mixing and mastering, and other than maybe the work I did on the Trolls movie, which was, mastered for motion picture, very high quality. Other than that, it's probably one of the finest sounding, sonically, albums that I've been a part of, if not the best sounding. So for people who are real audiophiles, I mean, it's a gorgeous sounding record. So And speaking of records, we'll probably put it out on vinyl too, because it's just got that vinyl feel. It's just so it's got kind of that retro soul feel and a neo soul and funk, and um, it's just really really cool. And I'm really proud of just the work that they did and that I did on it. So it was something that we collaborated on for a long time, and we're all really happy that it's finally there for the people to hear.
So, who wrote the lyrics? There are lyrics, there are singers. Tell me a little bit about who wrote the music, who wrote the lyrics, and also maybe the it's Brothers Nalbandyan, but you said there's other musicians. What instruments? And is it just you from the U.S. or are there other people from the U.S. And we know there are a number of people from Armenia involved in this.
Yeah, so I did all the lyrics and all the vocals. That was a constant throughout all the singles we did together. I did all the lyrics and vocals, and we wrote the music together. They would have stems or skeleton tracks, or even mostly finished tracks sometimes that they would send to me. Maybe it would be drums and bass, and maybe some keys or maybe guitar. And I would add all of my keyboards, key beds, if you will, just Rhodes and piano and synthesizers, organ, synth bass sometimes, and then my vocals. And I do a lot of harmonies and stuff like that. So it's big beds of vocals too. Sometimes 20 or more vocal parts, lots of harmonies, that kind of thing. And there's a couple of really great musicians also involved. Edgar Sahakian, who is a bassist, he played on one or two of the tracks on there. And Gagik Kodavirdi was a guitar player who played on the record as well. I'm the only U.S. based, the only diasporan on the record, but it is an all Armenian effort. So it's really cool. I've never done anything like that before. A lot of times, we talked about this before. A lot of times, I'm kind of like the token Armenian in the room, and I think a lot of Armenians kind of feel that way sometimes. Especially when we live, those of us who aren't in Glendale or Watertown, in America, we tend to be like the only Armenian in the room, and but sometimes people know about Armenianness through that one Armenian person, like we talked about before. So it was really a fun change to be kind of the least Armenian person in the room, in the recording space, if you will, in a way, and just to be a part, to do that with our brothers, and to be able to be a part of that collaborative effort, with our fellow Armenian people in the Republic, so cool. And we're sharing profits, so it supports Armenians in the diaspora, and it supports Armenians in the Republic. So buying a copy helps Armenian musicians at home in the Republic and abroad. So it's kind of a cool thing to be a part of in that way.
Yeah, I'll include all those links to how they could purchase the album and the comic book on right below the video. It'll be on there.
Thank
But
you.
I want to know, this is a question I've asked many people who have a new record, is the title track or the title of the album in general. That must be so hard to figure out. How did you come up with the title track or the title of the album?
Right. Yeah. So it was the second single that we had worked on, Garmir Caramel. And most of the songs are kind of, romantic, love, sexy, kind of about that sort of thing, boy girl thing. Um, we didn't get to it, unlike Exaltation, which was my last record. It's very much the opposite of that. And so Exaltation was probably very political, um, and and socially driven. This is more uh, 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 pure love and innocent, and but really beautiful too. And picking the actual title track was actually on the brothers. They're the ones who did it. I I think we had talked about it real briefly, and we're like, well, what do you want to call it? What should we call this? And then somebody said high funk or something like that. We talked about a couple things, and they were like, well, we should have it be one of the songs, because some of my albums, there is a title track, and then some albums, some of my conceptual albums, there is no title track. It's just kind of concept, and here's all the songs. But in this case, since it was very singles driven, we felt like we should have one of the songs be the name of the album. And I think I don't remember exactly what the catalyst was for the choice, except for the fact that I think maybe they felt like that was um, the appropriate choice, maybe subject matter. This is also just going out on a limb, and I'm just assuming, I'm just speaking for them, but it could be the combination, the fact that it's the only title in the album that has an Armenian word in it as well. So mixed with caramel, which is probably French or something, but in our English lexicon, our American lexicon. And so the combination of that kind of gives the listener or the consumer the idea of this fusion of Armenian and Armenian American, if you will. So I think that might have something to do with the choice. At least that's my that's my interpretation of their choice. I think it was a great choice, though. So
No, I love it. I love it. It's great. And since
thank you.
it's kind of like at least the way you're presenting it, you're kind of having both of them come out at the same time. I want to hear about the comic book and your passion for comic book, and then we'll get specific into this one. But it's not your first one either. So a little bit about your passion and how this whole thing came about.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I've loved comic books ever since I was, I don't know, in first or second grade. And I really loved Marvel comics. I really liked Jack Kirby, the artist, what most comic book readers say, he was the king. Uh, he was really important for me because, as I grew up finding out, he's this Jewish American guy who was, raised real poor and who was able to like really create all of the great characters that we know of today, like really a lot of the biggest characters we know of today that have now become these blockbuster movie things. But he was really combining science fiction and mythology. And he was like one of the first people to really take aliens and attribute them to an earthen kind of space, or like mix them with uh, pagan religion, whether it was Norse or Incan or Greek or whatever. And that really influenced me, like things like Thor, things like the Eternals, the idea of mythology having this extra historical basis and having this sort of extra, almost extraterrestrial basis, or like this larger. My book isn't really about all that, but it does deal with pagan mythology of Armenia specifically. And so that was one of my big influences, and just always loved the medium of comic books. I think that it's a very unique way to get an idea across, so different than music. And it has its own really special set of rules and special history and all that stuff. And I was always captivated by it. So a few years ago, I did the first issue of Sons of the Sun, which, if we're starting, Armenian history off right, if we have to have a beginning point, if you will, of course, is Haik Nahapet, and we spoke previously about that first issue. That issue is sold out physically, but people can download the digital version of issue number one in case you're a completist and you want to have one and two. Issue number one still exists in digital form. It's actually gorgeous on a tablet or a phone to look at. Beautiful, beautiful. And that details the story of Haik and Bel, the great battle, as most Armenians know, the sort of eponymous ancestor of the Armenian people. And so it starts with that. But that being said, both issue one and issue two are self-contained. So you don't have to have read issue one to understand issue two. There are uh, roughly 1,600 plus 1,800 years between issue one and issue two in terms of the meat of the story. So you don't have to necessarily know number one to understand number two at all. But I will say, spoiler alert, number three is going to be a continuation of number two. And number two does end with a cliffhanger. So number three, which we've already started plotting and working on, will be coming soon. It will be a continuation of this Vahan story. But yeah, that's the one we're doing now, is Vahan, the great king and god and hero ancestor of the Armenian people, who was famously born out of the volcano of Mount Nemrut. And we detail his fiery volcanic birth, his battling of dragons, his war with Ninos of Assyria, and the monster Barsham, and I'm not going to get too much deeper than that, but it's really, really captivating story if you're into fantasy, mythology, or Armenian history. But if you just love great comics and action-packed hero comics, it's that too. And the first issue I used Robert Iman, who's a fantastic Dutch-born comic book artist, and he gave it a real European kind of feel to it. It really felt more like one of the books you would see in Europe. And it was a little bit larger volume as well in terms of the size, not the actual page content, but the size of it was more like a European book. And then this one is very much more American style. So people who love Marvel, DC comics, things like that, it is the traditional comic book size. It might be a little bit longer in length. So you're getting a good 30 plus page comic. And we really spared no expense on the quality. It's the nice, glossy, shiny gloss. And every page is like that too. And it's just gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. And we used a guy this time, Steve Grezik, who was a guy I grew up with in New England. We went to school together, and he's not Armenian either. He's Polish American, but I recognized his talent immediately, and we really coincide on liking a lot of the same types of comics. You know, he has a lot of the same influences I do, and so much like with Robert, I gave him over 1 year long sort of crash course in Armenian mythology, history, architecture, clothing, sculpture, kachkars, wars, buildings, churches, edifices. Like he really, did his studying, and I was just sending him, hundreds of pages, pictures of different gods and pictures of different. This is what an Assyrian griffin looks like, and this is what all these different crazy things. And he really just took it and just went with it and did such a great job that the issue 3 we're going to be having Robert Iman and Steve Grezik working together on the 3rd issue. So I'm really excited about that collaboration of art, because one of them is going to be doing, like the penciling, inking, if you will, and the other one will be doing sort of the coloring and probably the lettering. So it's going to be a great collaboration in terms of the art with the 3rd one. And then most of the independent comic book companies, because I want to submit these to one of the big independent comic book companies like Image or Fantagraphics, and their big kind of prerequisite is to have 3 issues done. So we're going to have the 3 issues done, release the 3rd issue, maybe even release a graphic novel version, a nice hardbound version for the people who might have missed out on 1 or 2 or 3 or physical copies. Get a nice graphic version of all 3, and then submit it to one of the larger independent comic book companies, and hopefully maybe they can pick up what would be the first internationally distributed Armenian American comic book, I guess. So it would be kind of exciting if that reached fruition. But even if it doesn't, I'm an indie guy anyway. I go indie all the way, and I'm more than happy to sell it to the people my own way if need be. But it's been much like the album, it's been a real labor of love. And being Armenian and having studied Armenian history my whole life, and of course in college, doing this was just so special because, as we talked about in a previous interview, it's kind of a story and a story. So you've got the Ashug in like a medieval Armenian village somewhere. In this case, it's in Artsakh. I felt that was a necessary choice for this time. Telling the story, and then we have the story which takes place way in BC time. So it's 2 very different periods in Armenian history, and it's so cool to be able to touch on both of them in this comic book format, which I think is a lot more palatable for people who don't really care about reading history monographs, but still want to know some stories and want to know some stuff. And I think it's also like really important for Armenian kids to see Armenian heroes. And even fictional ones. Armenians are so funny. They're like, in general, I think there's kind of this like stereotype that Armenians are against fiction. It's like there's enough, these stories, it's all fake, da 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 da. But then when you take something like Armenian history and you can kind of transcribe it and mix it with the mythology and all the great stories and put it into a format uh, that really creates these fantastical heroes of yesteryear, it's really something I feel like the younger generation can latch on to. I mean, we've got our living heroes, of course, and great heroes from recent history, but it's really cool to see these heroes, these semi-legendary heroes, come to life on the page and be that sort of representation for Armenian kids. So, I was most honored by Armenian moms and dads who bought it for their kids. That was like the coolest, probably the coolest feeling for me as the creator, to see these characters that we all grew up knowing and hearing about be such a new, rich part of a young Armenian kid's imagination. That's really why I made these books, was for them. So, but it's so universal that, to be honest, most of my most of the people who have bought it are not Armenian, and just either love my work or love comic books or think it looks cool. So, and it's really cool hearing from them too, being like, wow, Danny, this comic book is so awesome. It's so much action, and then they call me and ask me, especially people I know that ordered it, call me and ask me all kinds of questions. Tell me what is this guy? What is, and they get to learn a little bit more about our culture. And there's nothing better than that either, is being able to teach those who don't know something about Armenian, in order to keep us going, to keep us relevant and around and in people's ears and being spoken from people's mouths. I think it's an important thing. So both are really a labor of love to me, and I'm really happy that I was able to complete this second issue. It was really cool.
Thanks so much, Danny. Can we go through of how people can purchase this one more time before we end?
Yeah, sure. People can get it by sending $25 domestic or $30 international to my PayPal, which is info@dannybedrosian.com, or they can send it to Cash App, which is mine is $Daniel Bedrosian, or Venmo, which is @Daniel Bedrosian. And those are the best three ways to get it. And like I said, you get issue one for just 15 for the digital from the same places. For $15, you could get issue one. So I hope everybody can definitely check that out. And can I mention one more thing too, Tigran? There's one more thing kind of in the works. This won't be out for a little while, but I don't know if we talked about this last time. But I am also writing a book, and it is called Canonized, and it's the authorized song personnel encyclopedia of P-Funk history, 1955 to 2021. It's over 570 pages already. It's basically a gigantic list, every song in the P-Funk canon, chronologically by artist or band, um, and who played on it and who sang on it. Other than the introduction, the forward, and a little bit of information about the process and the list itself, that's all the book is. It details it. So it's basically canonizing the entire catalog for the first time into one textual work. Um, Another labor of love that I've been doing almost my whole life. I've been working on this book, but I finally started putting, as they would say, pen to paper, or just typing the actual work. And it contains interviews with primary sources, i.e., 60 plus members of the band, and at this point 60 or 70 hours of interviews, including 15 hours with George Clinton himself of interviews detailing the exact minutia of every single person who was on every record, all the backup singers, the drummers, whoever it is. And for P-Funk fans, this is like the Bible. This is like, there's nothing bigger than this, because a good portion of what they talk about on all these P-Funk chat forums and groups on Facebook is who played on what. And it's always controversy. They're arguing about it. People don't know, or they think they know. And then the musicians themselves often have been miscredited or uncredited. And in a lot of cases, most albums list just who's on the album, not necessarily song by song. So these 7 bass players played on this album, these 12 drummers, but you don't know who played on what song unless you know their style exactly, or have talked to someone who was there. So this is really kind of putting all that to rest, at least as much as possible. And it details over 700 releases. And most of those are albums. Some of them are singles from the early period, but almost all of those are albums. So like anywhere between 575 and maybe 650 album releases um, detailed in this book. So it is a monstrous volume, and hopefully it'll be out by 2022. But I just want to let people know about it. It's something I've been working on for a long time. It kind of satiates the historian in me and the P-Funk musician at the same time. So I think it's something that a lot of people will really get a kick out of. And it's very very intensive, very detailed. So I want people to check that out too, for sure.
Well, thanks so much, Danny. Anything else you want to add before we end?
I think that's it. I really appreciate everything, Tigran. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you everybody for checking it out.
Thank you so much. And I'll have the links below in the YouTube description. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You too.